my parents and twin sister kicked me out at 16 to live in a tent. I fought for survival for years. Now I have my own home, and they showed up uninvited with my sister's family, demanding I take them in. My twin sister convinced my parents to kick me out at 16, claiming there was no place for me. For 12 years, I struggled to carve out a life for myself, and now my parents are demanding I let my sister move in because she's pregnant with her fourth child. I'm 28, and since childhood, I've suffered from my parents' toxicity. I have a twin sister who's always been my biggest headache. People say twins support each other, but in my case, she seized every chance to drag me down. The bullying in childhood wasn't enough. She's back in my life now, wanting to move in with her family, despite being the one who insisted I be thrown out at 16. She's always been selfish and self-absorbed, and much of that is my parents' fault. They always dreamed of a daughter, but with her came a son. They even told me to my face that if it weren't for the girl, they would have terminated the pregnancy. So, I exist only because she was there, and now I supposedly owe her my life. She never missed a chance to remind me of that. You can imagine what my childhood was like, living in a house where I wasn't wanted, where everything revolved around my sister. We were the same age, but I wasn't allowed to touch her toys. She got new clothes constantly, while I got 2 outfits a year, one for Christmas, one for my birthday. If my birthday hadn't been the same day as hers, it wouldn't have been celebrated at all. I received the bare minimum, and only so relatives wouldn't judge my parents. The only bright spot in my childhood was my grandfather. He saw through all their nonsense. Sadly, he died when I was 13. That was the worst day of my life. After that, I had no one to support me. We lived in a tiny house in the suburbs, and my sister and I shared a room, though in reality, I just had a bed and storage space under it. Her side was cluttered with clothes and toys, the walls covered with her posters. I couldn't even complain because, in my parents' eyes, they were doing enough for me. My sister hated my presence and let me into the room only to sleep at night. Even when I was sick, I wasn't allowed to lie in my bed, only on the living room couch, because, as a girl, she supposedly needed personal space. I desperately awaited turning 18 to leave, but it turned out my family wanted me gone even more. At 16, my sister brought home a 19-year-old loser who'd been kicked out after flunking 8th grade 3 times. His parents had married him off to work as a mechanic at a factory. My parents welcomed him, and of course, I had to make room. Our house had 2 bedrooms and a tiny living room. I asked if I could sleep on the couch, but Dad said he used it when Mom's snoring got unbearable. In winter, they told me to find my own place, like that was easy. To add insult, this loser fanned the flames, saying, "Finding a place isn't hard. My parents kicked me out at 15, and I managed. You've got a family waiting beyond that door." I just sighed. Most relatives lived far away, and my parents threatened me not to show up at their places, warning it'd expose their true nature. I asked friends if I could crash, but their parents wouldn't take me in if my own had kicked me out. One classmate living in a garage let me stay for a few months until his parents found me and threw me out. I slept on a bench for days until cops spotted me and returned me home. My parents concocted a story that I'd run away and temporarily took me back. Dad brought a beat-up tent from the dump, saying I could set it up in the backyard, a reward for keeping quiet to the cops and not going to relatives. The tent shielded me from rain, but winters were brutal. One night was so cold I thought I'd freeze to death. I knocked on the house, but no one answered. Desperate, I tapped on my parents' bedroom window, and Dad yelled to stop bothering him or he'd come out and beat me. I felt so awful I considered giving up, crying all night. The next day, I sought work that'd at least give me a corner to sleep. A bakery 30 kilometers away needed help at a small production site. The owner agreed to let me live there and even offered food. They baked bread at home and needed an assistant. I could stay in the backyard if I cleaned it up. I agreed instantly. The place was a mess, flour, sugar, and rats everywhere, but I was at rock bottom and had nothing to lose. I took the job, packed my things, and left. My sister was glad, saying, "Good riddance, there's no place for you here." No one asked where I was going. I cleared the yard and made it livable. Getting rid of the rats was tough, but I settled in over time. I had to drop out of school, just months from finals. Friends urged me to stay in the backyard and finish, but I'd given up. I worked hard, living off my wages, and soon realized I needed skills for a better job. My dad was a mechanic, so I'd played with his tools and helped with repairs as a kid. I saved money, took courses, and landed a job at an auto plant, working relentlessly to climb the ladder. Now I'm a supervisor. Recently, an old friend urgently needed to sell his house due to divorce troubles and needed a buyer fast. I wasn't sure about a 3-bedroom, but he offered a steep discount and flexible down payment terms. I seized the chance. 2 weeks ago, I moved into my new home, and today, unexpected guests showed up: my parents, sister, and that loser Bill. It was a shock. I hadn't spoken to them in years, and they hadn't tried to reach me. My new house is 25 kilometers from theirs, so stumbling upon it wasn't likely. I don't connect with relatives in person or on social media, but my neighbor, a friend, might have posted a photo of my house on Facebook, tipping them off. How they got the exact address, I don't know. Maybe Dad tracked it through my job. As soon as I opened the door, they barged in. Mom and Dad congratulated me, saying they were proud. I smiled, offered them seats. I'd only bought a bed, a few chairs, and a table so far. They sat, amazed I'd bought a house at 28 while they still rented. Meanwhile, my sister and her lazy husband started touring the place like they were moving in. I asked what was going on and why they'd suddenly appeared. They claimed they just wanted to visit. Funny timing, right when I least needed them. Then they shared their woes. Dad has hypertension, my sister has 3 kids, 14, 9, and 4, and is pregnant again. Congrats, I said dryly, debating whether to yell or politely ask them to leave. Mom asked if I'm marrying or have a girlfriend. I snapped, none of your business. She asked why I'm so irritable, if everything's okay. I said it was until they showed up. She laughed, offering help if settling in was hard. Then my sister declared, I've decided, we'll take the bedroom with the balcony and bathroom. I'm so glad I'll have my own bath. The kids can have the other room. I was floored. What the hell was happening? She continued, you've got a 3-bedroom house, and you're alone. You lived in a tent, so a room's an upgrade. The house is big enough for all of us. My parents interrupted, telling her to tend to her crying youngest. I turned to them and asked what this nonsense was. Mom said, Dad thinks it's tough living with 5. Her 14-year-old sleeps on the couch, the middle one with them, the youngest with her, and now another baby. They need a bigger place. I exploded. Mom added, you own this big house, why not take your sister in? I didn't let her finish, shouting, no way, I'm not letting anyone in. My sister screamed that I owe her because I exist thanks to her, same old record. If not for me, Mom and Dad wouldn't have had you. You owe me, repay it with this house. The room felt suffocating. I said, thanks for my existence, now get out. Before anyone could respond, I kicked them out. Dad tried to take control, raising his voice, saying as the man of the house, I must care for my sister. I yelled back that I'm not obligated to her, but they, as parents, were, and they failed. Now it's fine for his grandson to sleep on the couch, but when I asked, they kicked me out. I unloaded years of survival, living among rats in my employer's garage, decades in a dumpy apartment, while they never cared. Mom teared up, trying to hug me. I pulled away, ordering them to leave. That idiot Bill chimed in, forget it, bro, I lived like that for years and don't complain. You've got a big house alone, why need so much space? I gestured for him to shut up. My sister screamed at me for raising my voice at her husband. I replied, then get the hell out before I knock him out. I threw them out, too furious to let them speak. They've always been toxic, selfish, and now greedy. I'm not the 16-year-old puppet anymore. If they keep bothering me, I'll call the cops without hesitation. Update 1. My sister and her husband broke into my house. By the way, someone in the comments asked if she offered to pay rent. She didn't, and couldn't anyway. She and her deadbeat husband are freeloaders and baby-making machines, living off my parents for 12 years and now wanting to leech off me. My parents aren't thrilled supporting her. I saw their frustration last visit, but instead of kicking her out, they're dumping the problem on me. A week after the first visit, Mom came to my house again, getting straight to the point. I must let my sister move in. I said no. She complained about the cramped house and so on. I said no again. Then she tried threatening me, saying, "Sweetie, you live alone in this big house, gone 12 hours a day. What if someone breaks in? A family here would make it safer. Plus, they'd help with cleaning, dishes, laundry." I said no for the last time. "Get out, I don't want any of you here." Days later, a neighbor reported seeing a pregnant woman, a man, and a boy lurking. When they noticed him watching, they left. I thanked him, gave him my number, and asked him to call if he saw them again. Cameras weren't installed yet, planned for the weekend. Who'd have thought they'd strike sooner? Days later, the neighbor called, saying someone might have broken in. I rushed home in a panic. He was right. My sister and Bill had entered through a back window. She said, "We had no choice. You acted like a jerk and wouldn't let us in. We live here now, so deal with it." I was shocked at how far she'd go. Bill came out of a room they turned into a bedroom, saying, "It worked, didn't it?" Without thinking, I lunged at Bill. My sister stepped between us. I pushed her aside and hit him. Her 14-year-old son attacked me with a bottle, cutting my head. The blow wasn't severe. I stayed conscious, though dizzy, but rage kept me upright. Everyone panicked seeing blood. My sister called our parents, and Bill with his son started cleaning up. My neighbor called the police. My sister and Bill apologized, begging me not to report their son. I said they're all going to jail. Police arrived, took my statement. My sister denied the break-in and assault, claiming they just visited, her son was joking, and I fell, injuring myself out of anger at them, liar. My parents showed up, pressuring me to drop charges, uniting to paint me as the liar, saying I'm using police to settle scores. Luckily, my neighbor corroborated my story, and police arrested them. They spent a night in jail since my parents couldn't afford bail. The next day was court. I went to the hospital, my wounds were treated, and a doctor checked for internal damage. I took a couple days off to recover. I sued them for assault, seeking compensation for legal fees, and the court ordered them to pay. My parents begged me to drop it, but I threatened to sue for orchestrating the attack. Her son, a minor, was sent to a juvenile facility for a week. His parents had to cover my lost wages, medical bills, and a hefty fine. They requested community service instead. A week passed, and it's been quiet. I hope they've learned and won't bother me again. Update 2. Seems my parents haven't given up. Yesterday, they showed up at my house again. I slammed the door in their faces. They stood outside for nearly an hour, begging me to listen. I had to let them in. Wish I could have just yelled from the window and threatened to throw them out like Dad did to me 12 years ago. That's why they're back. Both started crying, saying they need my help. I cut them off. If it's about my sister, don't count on me. They said it's about them. Son, I'm aging, getting weaker, can't work like before. Our house hasn't been repaired in years, it's falling apart. I interrupted, get to the point. They want to move in with me because, as a responsible son, I should care for my aging parents. Maybe I would if they'd been responsible parents, but they weren't. I asked about their house and if they'd terminate the lease. They said they'd pass it to my sister. Oh, I see, you found another way to dump your mess on me. After failing to offload her, now you're moving in. They won't live in my house for free, they said. My sister's willing to pay rent, and I could use it for my mortgage. I said I don't need her money, she shouldn't worry about my upkeep, let her care for herself. Mom sobbed, complaining how hard it is for my sister, who can't even sleep properly with her kids in the same room. I said that's not my problem. If she's recklessly having kids without a plan, it's her fault. They pressed. What more can we say? You won't take your sister or let us move in. Couldn't you at least let us stay? The house is too big for one. I yelled, this is karma. Remember kicking me out? Now reap what you sowed. I shut the door. They left with angry faces. I don't care what they think, I won't be a doormat or bend to their demands.